My parents didn't paint. The person who made me fall in love with art was a stranger on TV, Bob Ross. And the best part is, he spoke to so many generations that probably you cannot even guess my age. Well, I hope you can't. Such an inspiring soul that made everyone happy. Was he happy though? We will see. But first, as always, I take you to the year that Bob Ross was born in, 1942. The United States joins World War II and performs their first attack on Japan. Declaration of the United Nations was signed by 26 countries. One of the most watched movies of all times, Casablanca, premiered in 1942. World's first nuclear reactor was built in Chicago. Also, together with Bob Ross, there were so many celebrities who were born in this year. Let's look at this list. Joe Biden, Jimi Hendrix, Harrison Ford, Paul McCartney, Stephen Hawking, and Barbra Streisand. And during these times in Daytona Beach, Florida, Robert Norman Ross, or with the name that we know him, Bob Ross, was born. His mother, Ollie Ross, was a waitress, and his father, Jack Ross, was a carpenter. Bob was raised in beautiful Orlando, Florida. During his teenage years, he cared for animals such as armadillos, snakes, alligators, and squirrels. Don't worry if you can't play with them because they're not in your backyard. Florida has a whole different level when it comes to animal habitat. He got this feeling of affection for animals from his mother. He also had a half-brother, Jim, who he said in his show many times that he really loved spending time with.
There. We were kids, we used to fight like cats and dogs. You know how brothers are. And I never expected that left hand to get me. Well, he used to sock me. Now he grew up and he's bigger than I am, so I hope he doesn't remember all that. There we go. He's a good man, though. He's my best friend in the whole world.
Bob Ross's mother and father were divorced when he was very little, but years and years later, they were going to remarry. However, shortly after this marriage, his father would pass away. He was never good with school, so he dropped out of high school in the 9th grade, which didn't surprise me actually, because if you look at many eminent creative minds, they don't do well in school, they can't fit in. So, he started working with his father at the shop. He was helping his dad chop the woods, build all these furniture. That's how he lost his left index finger. Ouch. At the age of 18, thinking that he wanted a purpose and direction in his life, he joined the army. He first started his service as a medical records technician, but in time, he was going to raise to the rank of master sergeant. During his service, he became really interested in painting. The very first paintings of him were during the short breaks in military, so he had to be really quick. This is how he improved his quick technique. How do you think in his TV shows he could complete the whole artwork in just less than 30 minutes? Yep, those short breaks in military. He got married to his first wife when he was just 22 years old. Vivian Ridge was going to give Bob a son, Stephen Ross. His son was also going to be an amazing painter in the future. In 1977, they got divorced. Bob and Steve moved to Alaska when Steve was just a baby. He was the first sergeant at the clinic of Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska. He was doing a job that required him to do things that went totally against his natural temperament. With his own words, he says, "I was the guy who makes you scrub the latrine, the guy who makes you make your bed, the guy who screams at you for being late at work." He didn't like raising his voice, but he had to. He fell in love with the nature in Alaska, the endless ocean, mountain ranges, trees. The happy trees were amazing for him. While in the military, he signed up for an art class at the Anchorage USO Club. It's called Alaska Cafe now, and it looks pretty cool. But he argued with teachers quite often in this club because apparently the instructors were more into abstract painting. Bob said they would tell you what makes a tree, but they wouldn't tell you how to paint a tree. Bob remarried Jane Ross, who was also working at the Air Force. While he was painting and he was doing his military service, he was also working as a part-time bartender. He was selling his paintings at the bar. One day in 1975, he was working at the bar again, and he saw on TV something amazing. A TV show called Magic of Oil Painting by Bill Alexander.
Yeah, you and I, with all our creative power, we will create a better tomorrow. I love you.
In this TV show, the German host was painting so quickly, so beautifully, that Bob Ross said, "That's it! That's what I want!" He was painting sceneries as well, just like Bob Ross, but he was so quick because Alexander was using this technique known as alla prima. He renamed this technique as wet on wet. In this method, the thin paint will stick to the thicker paint, so you can move very quickly, and if you make a mistake, you can just blend it away. Just Bob Ross said, "We don't make mistakes, we have happy accidents." He loved this idea of painting quickly. He wanted to paint his idea before it leaves his mind. He planned to train with Bill Alexander in Florida, so he promised his wife that he will do his best to make a fortune, and if he cannot, he will come back to Alaska and do the work around the house, be a good husband and father. He left Alaska alone with $1,000 that Jane gave him in his pocket. He signed a deal with Bill Alexander and he started going across the country teaching Bill Alexander classes. In one of his painting workshops, he met his future business partner, Annette Kowalski. Well, that time Annette had just lost her child, and her husband was even willing to drive her all the way down to Florida so that she could take some classes from Bill Alexander. So she gave a call and she asked about the workshop. She wanted to get more information. Then she learned that Bill Alexander actually got retired, and instead of him, now a guy named Bob Ross was teaching. So she was very frustrated, yet she wanted to go and learn this very quick style, so she signed up. During the 5-day seminar, she fell in love with Bob Ross's style. She was mesmerized. So she asked Bob Ross to join her and her husband for lunch. During that lunch, she asked him, "So how about you join me in Washington, D.C. and you teach classes? We will be partners." And Ross said, "Okay, let's do it." Bob Ross left Bill Alexander Company to join Kowalski in Washington, D.C. But it wasn't easy to get students as nobody knew him yet. The workshops he was running were not getting any sign-ups. So he opened up an evening class thinking that daytime might not be good for everyone. Only one man showed up. Kowalski wanted to cancel, but Bob Ross said no way. After the lesson, the guy was so impressed that he made an offer. He offered $1 million and wanted 40% of all Bob Ross's future revenue from his painting classes. Bob Ross and Kowalski said no. This is important. This meant that they believed they could do more. They were so confident in what they were doing. Rightfully so. However, the path to success was painful. He was giving art classes in art stores and shopping malls with medium-sized audience. They were barely making ends meet. During this time, Bob Ross took a very important decision just out of necessity. To save money on haircuts, he got a perm, and he hated it. He wanted to save as much as possible on that $1,000 that Jane gave him. Before, his hair was like this, and after the perm, he had his signature look. In the midst of all these financial difficulties, Bob Ross told Annette, "If you love what you do, money will come." Annette called Bill Alexander and kindly asked if they could do a commercial together with Bob Ross so that it would help promoting their workshops. While filming this commercial on TV, the TV people got really excited. They loved Bob Ross's energy. They asked Ross and Kowalski if Bob Ross would want to be on television. They said, heck yeah. Right there and then, ladies and gentlemen, in 1982, the legacy of Bob Ross, the joy of painting, started. He had a feeling that this show could last for a very long time, so he decided to wear something look timeless. So in each episode, you see him with a button-up shirt and jeans.
Hi, I'm Bob Ross, and for the next 13 weeks, I'll be your host as we experience the joy of painting.
And poor Bob, even though he hated his perm, he couldn't change it anymore because it was in his logo. And actually, it was going to quickly become his trademark. During this show, he wanted intimacy with his audience, so he chose a completely black, simple background. It was just him and his canvas and his paint and the audience. In 1984, Bill Alexander played in this commercial together with Bob Ross, giving his painting brush to Bob Ross, saying that from one almighty painter to another almighty painter, you will continue my legacy.
I hand over now that almighty brush to almighty man, and that is Bob Ross. Congratulate you.
Thank you very much, Bill. We look forward to seeing you right here on this channel for the joy of painting each week.
But ironically, in 1991, Bill Alexander was going to tell New York Times like this: he betrayed me. I taught him wet on wet method. I trained him, and he thinks he can do better than me. Well, the experts say, though, this wet on wet method was invented in the 15th century in Flanders. As a teacher artist, I want to say something that just because you are the teacher, it doesn't mean that you will always be better than your students. Well, your students will learn and improve a lot, and they might become better artists than you are. And actually, as a teacher, you should be proud instead of being jealous. The next step for him was to publish his book. In order to finance that, Kowalski and her husband needed to mortgage their home. For each series, there was one book published. First time the show aired, the audience was small, and the quality of the filming was not at its best. WNBC said goodbye in the end. WIPB in Muncie, Indiana, a PBS station, agreed to run commercials for Bob Ross's painting classes in a nearby mall. With a smart decision, they ran these commercials right before and after Bill Alexander's program. Well, the promotion worked, and he started to have high number of students. Then Ross went to WIPB manager and proposed a painting program. He painted a demo for them in a very short time. They were so impressed. But they said for a series they would need 13 paintings. And guess what? He did those paintings in just 3 days. And not just that paintings, a couple of them. Because he would paint them first in his head, then he would paint them on canvas, and the next day he would paint them live. While he was painting live, his reference previous painting would be just right next to him, but you couldn't see. After seeing him creating 13 different paintings in 3 days, WIPB said, okay, you have a show now. His wife Jane came to Indiana from Alaska to help in the office. She was a great help. Now they were a team of 4: Bob Ross, Jane Ross, Annette Kowalski, and Mr. Kowalski. Many times they wanted to give up, but Bob Ross was the persistent one. He never wanted to quit. He was so encouraging in his programs, and he always repeatedly said, anybody can paint. He made it look so easy. He knew that once you take the first step, you will thrive.
What message do you want the viewer to get out of your program? The children, the adults, the painters, the non-painters.
Believe in yourself. You can do anything that you believe you can do. But you have to believe.
In 2014, the blog 538 analyzed 381 episodes of Bob Ross. And the analysis showed that his 91% of paintings included at least one tree, 44% included clouds, 39% included mountains, 34% contained mountain lakes. His work rarely contained human or signs of human life. Even the cabins, they looked unoccupied, and there was no smoke in the chimney. Of course, he got criticism from the traditional artists who said the method was overly simplistic, and some said that his color combination was not reflecting natural world. What separated him from these traditional artists, though, he made this complicated looking process so easy as possible, and didn't talk about the terminology like perspective, sfumato, alla prima, or golden ratio. He just explained them with simple words. Oh, as the mountains come closer, they will get bigger and darker. Just like that.
And make just layer after layer, but do the one that's farthest away first and work forward, always working forward.
He didn't want to confuse the audience. He never let those critics to get to him though. He said many times that he was not teaching traditional art or fine art. He was teaching the joy of painting. As years passed, his show was almost on every national station now. Everyone was talking about how his voice and paintings were giving peace and happiness to people. Let's hear some of his famous quotes.
I think in one of the earlier shows I mentioned, we don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents. Give him a shake and just beat the devil out of him. Sometimes those brushes get away and they go zoom, clean the other side of the room. That's when you find out who your friends are. There we go. Just have to splash the cameraman one time so he doesn't feel neglected. That's the name of the game. It's enjoying. You really ought to enjoy what you do in life. If you do, then you'll do a good job. Painting should make you happy. It does nothing else. It should make you happy. And if it doesn't make you happy, you're doing the wrong thing. Because it's fun. Now, shoot, you know me. I think everybody needs a friend, so we're going to give him one right here. Some nice, bright colors. It's a fantastic day. It's a good day to be alive. Come to think of it, every day's a good day to be alive. Maybe there lives a happy little bush right along here. Shoot, take life easy.
His love for animals was more obvious in his show as well. He had a squirrel, Peapod, living in his pocket. He also loved possums, owls, snakes, birds, and there were many other animals in his show.
So if you see little creatures around your house, help take care of them, because they're God's little creatures, and they're fantastic. Get to know them, make friends with them.
In his free time, he would help rehabilitate injured animals and build cages for them. Once they were healed, he would set them free. When he was living in Muncie, Indiana, his house was by a lake, and he would regularly feed the fish. When he had a heart attack while living there, he needed to rest to recover. During the weeks of his rest, he asked his business partner Kowalski to feed the fish because he was so worried about them. He donated most of his paintings to PBS, which auctioned them very often. Also, he started his own line of products to refine the products that Alexander had been using. Bob Ross oil paints were thicker, and also he reduced the big brush size from 2.5 inches to 2 inches. In 1987, he realized that he got a lot of demand for his classes, and TV show was also demanding. So he decided to expand his business, and he started training instructors for his workshops. They would teach in Bob's place.
One of the things that we're trying to do as we travel around and teach this almighty method is we're trying to gather up an army of teachers. And soon we'll have teachers that travel this entire beautiful country.
He would go from one TV show to another just to promote his work. After 300 episodes in early 90s, Bob Ross' show started to expand its borders. So in a respective order, Canada, Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, the United Kingdom, Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Turkey, Iran, South Korea, and Japan. They were all running Bob Ross's shows. I grew up in Turkey, and I remember every Sunday I would be in front of TV glued, and that was the only show really who brought 3 generations together, me, my grandma, and my mom. We were just watching him as if we were watching a magician.
Doğrusu şu anda ilk işim tuvale iyi bir satır sağlamak. Fırçayı gördüğünüz gibi hareket ettirerek üzerinde rahat çalışılabilecek bir kar zemini oluşturuyorum.
Now he was running the most famous art show in the world, literally. He was an icon. Bob Ross Inc. would become a $15 million business. Do you remember the guy who offered $1 million in return? He asked for 40% of the whole revenue. Well, $50 million. It was a smart decision not to accept that offer. Do you see, guys, what happens when you believe in your work and yourself? While he was at the top of his career, something really bad happened. In 1992, he lost his wife, Jane, to cancer, and the worst came around the same time. He had been treated for lymphoma decades ago, and he was in remission. But unfortunately, his cancer came back. 2 years before he died, he knew that he was dying, and he only told his closest friends and family. But he was so worried that his landscapes would also die with him. He didn't want his legacy to die. In Florida, they started his workshops to train a new series of instructors to carry his legacy. Although he knew he was going to die, he put a happy face for each episode of season 31. But in these episodes, sometimes I could see the sadness in his eyes.
Until next time.
While doing this season 31, he started to feel weak already. He was losing his hair due to chemotherapy and radiation, so he started wearing a wig. Of course, we couldn't tell. 2 months before his passing, he married his girlfriend, Linda Brown. In the middle of shooting season 32, he called the crew and he said he was feeling too weak to travel from Florida to Indiana. So the crew made a decision to stop filming The Joy of Painting. But still, Bob Ross really wanted to continue inspiring people. So he accepted an offer from this children's show, Adventures of Elmer and Friends. But he said he couldn't travel. Then the whole staff, the production crew, flew to Florida and did a shooting in his own house. When the shooting crew got into the house, they were shocked because Bob Ross had lost a lot of weight and a lot of hair. This kind of information and the interview with his friends can be found in this documentary called Bob Ross, the Happy Painter. It's available on his own YouTube channel. Just check it out. Although he was weak, he was in good spirits and they filmed the pilot. However, he couldn't make it further. This was going to be his last program ever.
Hi, everyone.
What do you think that means?
I'll bet the trees and animals knew all about old Walter's treasure. Like it says.
But how does that help us?
I think you should talk to a tree.
But unfortunately, he could only make it to the pilot episode. On July 4, 1995, lymphoma took his life in his Florida home at the age of 52. His grave is at the Woodlawn Park in Gotha, Florida, under a plaque marked Bob Ross, television artist. His students, the instructors that were actually trained during his workshops, were now more than 2,000 people, and they continued to teach his legacy even after his passing. He completed over 30,000 paintings in his lifetime, and people started to ask what happens to all these artwork. The New York Times report says that Kowalskis still have them, but they don't have the proper conditions to store art. Guess what Bob Ross fans did? They flooded the Smithsonian American Art Museum with letters, so they couldn't stay silent, and the museum offered Kowalski's to buy a selection of Ross's paintings and other items about the show to place on an exhibit. I think Bob Ross had deserved this a long time ago. Netflix, YouTube, and the Twitch, of course, caused his popularity to grow among Generation Z. If you haven't visited his official YouTube channel, by the way, I highly recommend you to check it out. On the social media platform Twitch, his name was mentioned together with ASMR. ASMR is an autonomous sensory meridian response, which is a euphorial feeling that can be achieved by oral, touch-based, or visual ways. The president of Bob Ross Inc., John Kowalski, said that he is sort of the godfather of ASMR. People were into Bob Ross for ASMR reasons before the term ASMR existed. Not only in the United States, but all around the world, he made people believe in themselves. Bob Ross has a special place in my heart and probably in a lot of people's hearts right now. He made us think that we have the power to do whatever we want to do in this job, even though we think that we can't. He taught generations not just how to paint, but how to love nature, how to care for animals, and most importantly, how to forgive ourselves when we make mistakes. It wasn't the end of the world. I think he taught us how to love ourselves. In those 30-minute periods, he made us forget all about our worries, and he let us dream freely with him during his painting. No matter how old we were, who we were, or where we lived, we were with him in those paintings, wandering around the little happy trees and flying among the free little clouds, and we found ourselves peeking into the cabin in the woods. Thank you for teaching us the joy of painting, Bob. You touched a lot of lives, and you were truly a great artist, an amazing teacher. I learned a lot from you. Well, I would like to finish with his goodbye here. Take the stage, Bob.
I'd like to say just thanks for this time today. The chance to share your world along the way. One day soon, our paths may cross again. Until then, God bless, my friend.